Hey guys, it's the Christian Imperialist here. I want to thank some of you. Some of you have been super patient. About every week I do a poll on what you want to see me do a video of, and for the last 2 months I've been putting typology on there, and a lot of you have been wanting it, but it keeps ending up getting second or third. Keeps getting beat by Russia, just like Ukraine. It keeps getting beat by election coverage, or you can just see some of my videos. Those keep getting the poll, and then the typology keeps getting pushed and pushed. And in fact, I won last Friday, and I owe this to you. It's about a week late, but that's because I had some technical difficulties. My ring light was making a hiss, and I made the video. It sounded terrible. And so, because I love you guys, I broke Calculon's rule. I do a second take. And so today we're going to be talking about typology. And I love doing this video again because it's one of my favorite subjects. And to be honest, if you don't understand the recurring themes in the Bible, usually you're missing out on the meaning of what's happening. And so today we're going to talk about types. And I can do about 6 or 7 videos of this, but we're going to start with a fairly simple one, okay? Now, whenever you read about typology in seminary or just your own personal studies, you'll hear the term a type and then an antitype. I don't find these terms to be very useful because a lot of people learn prefixes and they think anti to mean opposite. But the concept of a type is a likeness of, kind of a casting, if you're into metallurgy, or perhaps Michelangelo chiseling and making a likeness of something. So that's what a type is, and an antitype isn't the opposite of. In fact, it in the literature, it really just means the true thing that is being made a likeness of. So you could say David, the actual David, is a true antitype versus the statue of David, which the artist wouldn't know what he actually looked like. So that's a bad example, but you kind of get the gist of it. The antitype isn't necessarily the opposite. In fact, it is the real thing that it's trying to display, trying to show. And so today I'm going to talk about one of my fun ones. If any of you watch Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson, he loves talking about ancient Near East and water. And it's a very important concept. If you've already watched him, you already kind of know a little bit about this, but I'm going to go into it a little bit more. So one of the earliest documents that we have from ancient Sumeria is tax documents. This guy paid this many goats, whatever, to the government, it's fun. But the second oldest thing that we have is old poetry. And a lot of the poetry talks about water. Now, what do the ancient Sumerians believe about water? The ancient Near East, what do they believe about water? Well, the first poem that we have actually says something to the effect of, what the wild beasts don't eat, referring to their crops, the floods destroy. And what the floods don't destroy, the wild animals eat. And so they have this very pessimistic view of everything about life, but most importantly, they talk about water, how bad it is. Now, we all know that the water can be good. You drink water when you're thirsty. You can, take a shower in water, it's good. But in literature, in their literature, and in their concept, if you understand antiquity, water was always bad for them. And so when you start reading ancient Near East accounts, and when you read the Bible, that concept, that visceral understanding is that water, we all know that water is bad. Water destroys. Okay? So just take that at the surface level. Water is bad in the minds of whoever reads the Bible back then, okay? And whoever writes it. So we'll get into that. So let's start at the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and it was without void and all this, right? Okay, then the second day, what does he do? He creates the waters above and the waters below, okay? And then on the third day, what does he do? He separates the waters below from dry land. Cool stuff, huh? Yeah, I planned ahead. So, the whole Genesis 1 narrative is God creating everything and then creating structures around it. Now, as we already mentioned, water is chaotic, it's destructive. I don't know if you've seen The Legend of the Drunken Master with Jackie Chan before he got famous. It's an old Chinese one, but he's kind of a drunk who knows how to fight using his alcoholism. But when he's detoxing, when he gets his lowest point, he reads this proverb that says, "A boat can float in water, but it can also sink," telling you the dangers of water, because it can be good and it can be bad. And so in creation, these things are good. Water is good, but we have to know that death, or at least the type of death, the unstructuredness of things, is in the Genesis 1 narrative. Now, I talk about dry land because this is where we first see the importance of dry land. Once we get to dry land, we start seeing animals and more taxonomies of what God creates, the grasses and the birds, and eventually in day 6, man. Man is made out of good stuff, dry land. Okay, so if you know your Bible and you're going along with me, you got Genesis 1, you start moving over to about Genesis, 7, 8, 9. We start hearing about a guy named, I'll give you 40 days to figure it out. Noah, very good. Good job, guys. Be proud of yourselves. So what do we know about Noah? Is water good or bad? Well, in that story, it's very, very bad. The waters from above come down, the waters from beneath the earth come up, and it floods out the entire earth, giving us death. Death for everything except the very few people, 8, I believe, who are saved through an ark. All right, that is their concept of safety. And when they send out the birds, what are they looking for? Looking for dry land. Okay, and they end up getting on dry land, and they descend from the mountain. Mountains are another typology. We'll get into it, I swear. It's so good. You'll love it. Anyway, okay, moving right along. What happens after that? Tower of Babel, fire and brimstone. Moving on to Abraham, Sodom and Gomorrah, fire and brimstone. Moving right along. Then you keep going down Abraham's line. Isaac, Jacob. You're moving on. And then you have the Israelites in Egypt. What do we know about Egypt? Well, they were trying to kill firstborn. The Egyptian mothers, some of them would put their children in baskets, kind of like the ark, again, to avoid the death. Or they put them in the Nile, which is kind of a death. That's a small instance, but as that fella grows up, what happens? 40 years, he exiles, and then 40 years more, he comes back. He's 80 years old. He gets Pharaoh to give up the people, and then they're escaping, and they end up getting stuck between the Red Sea and an army of Pharaoh. Red Sea, death. Army of Pharaoh, death. Were there no graves in Egypt that you brought us out here to die? And what happens? God opens up the waters of the Red Sea. He parts the waters of the Red Sea to give them dry land, and they walk across safely. The waters of the Red Sea were not their salvation. The dry land was. Now, once they get to the other side, what happens? The death covers over who? The Egyptians, the wicked, the evil. Death and destruction. Right there. It's from the water. Moving forward. They're wandering for 40 years. Moses ends up dying. Joshua takes control. What happens? What do they come up to? They come up to the Jordan. They can't enter the promised land because there's water in the way. But you know what? They have to pass through the waters. They have to pass through death to get to the promised land. And why do they have to pass through water? Well, because the previous generation was wicked and didn't believe in God and didn't believe God's mighty works. And so it's both symbolic of crossing the Jordan. People don't die in that instance, but they couldn't cross the Jordan. They couldn't cross that threshold because they needed to die, those that were wicked. The righteous generation after them do cross over, and they cross over on dry land. Just like when they crossed over the Red Sea, God dried the water so that they could walk. And during this time, if you read Joshua 1 through 5, somewhere in there, the The 12 tribes each were told to carry a stone and place it in the river to where the river ought to be, and place the stone there to signify that they had crossed in dry land. Cool stuff. So they keep going. The story keeps going. You have the judge period. You have the kingdom period. You have the bad kingdoms. You have the splits. Then what happens? Well, there's a group of people called the Babylonians. And what do? They end up conquering the nation of Judah. And in the 51st chapter of Jeremiah, you see a pronouncement against Babylon. He basically gets the word of the Lord, and it says that Babylon will be destroyed by flood. Like, oh, that's fun. That's fun language. Well, the capital of Babylon is Babel, and it's a city. And the funny thing about this is that most people say, oh, it's going to be destroyed by flood. That's not too difficult to foretell, because the city is surrounded by rivers. It's going to flood. Oh, there's going to be a great water. There's going to be a flood. Well, if you understand that water and flooding is meant to be death, you actually get a funnier understanding, because when the Assyrians come and destroy, they end up diverting the rivers like so, and it dries up the natural fortifications of the city so that the armies can siege the city on dry land. The floods, the death came to Babylon, but the water technically didn't. Still prophecy fulfilled, because he's saying that death and destruction will come to Babylon. It didn't actually mean literal water. In fact, the chaos was the destruction by the Assyrians. Moving right along. We're already at 12 minutes. We'll get going, because we have like 2 or 3 more instances, and I want to get to it real quick. So, story of Jonah. Years after, when the Assyrians conquer, you have the Assyrian Empire. They have multiple cities that are kind of the capitals of the empire. One of those is Nineveh. I can't spell Nineveh. Nineveh. Now, if you know the story of Jonah, he's a prophet of the Lord. He's told to go east to Nineveh. He refuses. Instead, he goes to, he wants to go west. He goes to the Mediterranean Sea. Not a good plan. You can Tony Stark that if you needed to. Anyway, so he goes and he's running away. He goes and he boards a ship. He gets on the ship. Storms are coming. Water from above is coming. The water from the waves are coming. The men on the ship are freaking out, because death is hitting them from all angles. And so they cast lots and find out who is responsible for this. Jonah. And what do? They cast Jonah after, we don't want his death to be on us. They still do it. They cast him into the water. And what does that symbolize? Cast him into death. And what happens? They all get saved. They're safe. The death got what it needed. It needed Jonah. Now, it says he descends into Sheol. I think everyone recognizes that Sheol means death. All right. He's descending into water. He's getting, it says that his face is getting covered with seaweed and wrapped in all this. He's dying. And I truly believe that Jonah dies in that narrative. We don't call the belly of the fish Sheol. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about literal death. And you see resurrection. And we can get into that in a different video. But again, the concept is that he descends into water, a death. If you believe he dies or not, that's another video. But when the fish regurgitates him, where does he end up? Boom, back on dry land. His resurrection occurs on dry land. And then he goes to Nineveh and he preaches repentance, and they all believe him. Pretty amazing story. Now, keep going. We're almost there. New Testament. You see situations of baptisms. What happens in baptism? You are standing up in death. You are buried into death. You are resurrected. You're brought up out of death. It's a picture of, it's a symbol, it's a picture, it is a likeness of death, burial, and resurrection. Christ being the firstborn of the resurrection, he underwent a death. He went into Sheol. He occurred that, and then he got resurrected. You don't get that when you just sprinkle water on a forehead or pour it on a forehead. Sorry, any Presbyterian Reform guys, I think y'all are missing the boat. I think the Greek church has still got it right, even though they got the timing of when to do it wrong. But moving right along, we do have an instance in the New Testament that is very, very important. And it almost occurs just like Jonah, the story of Jonah. Jesus is on a boat with the disciples, they're fishermen, and he's asleep, and just like Jonah was asleep, by the way. And what happens? Storms are raging, water from above is hitting, the waters of the sea are hitting the boats, and they're freaking out. They're like, we're going to die. Why? Because water dies. Now here's your gospel message for today. They get Jesus, and what does he say? Peace, be still. Now, yes, at that time, everything was calm. The storms went away, the waters chilled out. And you remember what the disciples said? Who is he who can control the waters? You have the Prince of Peace who is able to stop death. He can create peace. He can make the waters not be chaotic. With a word, he can stop everything because he is the Prince of Peace. It's that simple. He ends death with his word. Now, moving right along, we're almost at the end, but if you look in Revelation, you see this picture of the new heavens and the new earth. And there, what do you see? The waters are like glass. Now you could say like glass. What does that mean? Does it mean they're hard? No, that's not what they're saying. It says they're still. You can see through them. They're not murky. They're controlled. Water is no longer something that is of death in the new heavens and new earth. It is like, it is still, it is good, it is made, it is controlled. And so for a typology, taking you from Genesis 1 all the way to Revelation, like, it is an important concept. And you see that the importance of its theme keeps rolling out. And in dry land, it's kind of a counterpart because you see them very often in the same narratives. And so I just want to give you all that quick little lesson. I know we're about 17 minutes in, and thank you all so much for listening. I'm going to try to do another quick video right now because I love you guys, and it's Friday. See ya.